As one ages, there's a reevaluation of values, where much of what seemed important in youth loses its relevance. Over the years, priorities inevitably shift, and this isn't a sign of surrender, but rather the result of realizing what truly deserves attention, energy, and peace of mind. The wisdom gained with age isn't gleaned from books or advice, but is the result of life experience, allowing one to distinguish the truly important from the secondary. Below are 7 aspects of life that often lose their significance after the age of 70. These aren't just abstract philosophical reflections, but rather life truths based on experience, supported by psychological research, and confirmed by older people of different generations. Perhaps each of these aspects caused stress and anxiety at some point in life, but now it's time to break free from them. This freedom doesn't mean indifference, but rather gaining clarity. Understanding what no longer deserves worry frees up space for what truly matters: health, goals, relationships, and inner balance. Stay with us to find out exactly what things cease to matter after 70 and how this can change your life for the better. If you've ever wondered when that long-awaited ease in life will come, it's important to understand that it doesn't happen because difficulties disappear, but because of the ability to deal with them in a new way. The following 7 revelations can not only confirm inner feelings, but also provide an opportunity to navigate life's journey with greater confidence, dignity, and importantly, without unnecessary burden. The first revelation concerns the opinions of others. At a certain point in life, the opinions of others carried significant weight. Whether it was choosing clothes, a career, a car, or even parenting methods, someone else's judgment could be perceived as a criterion of one's own worth. However, after 70, there's a turning point. A person begins to perceive these opinions for what they really are: fleeting, inconsistent, and often based on someone else's insecurity, not on their own truth. It becomes clear that striving to please others doesn't bring peace, but only postpones achieving one's own. Eleanor, a venerable lady of 74, experienced inner torment for a long time before deciding on an action that went beyond the usual. She was overcome with fears about the gossip of neighbors regarding her garden or critical comments from relatives about resuming her passion for painting. However, one day a question arose in her mind: what does the opinion of others matter? This thought firmly settled in her mind, and as she followed this principle, she felt more and more freedom. Now Eleanor prefers bright outfits, grows plants in the garden that please her eye, and puts her artwork on public display, even if it's not perfect. And remarkably, she smiles more often than she did in her 50s. Giving up the desire for approval from others shouldn't be seen as indifference or rudeness. It's rather an acknowledgement of the importance of one's own voice, which should sound louder than the noise of other people's opinions. It's the realization that people will always form their opinions, regardless of what you do. And as a rule, they forget about it as quickly as they formed it. The most important thing is your own feelings about the choices you make. When you go to bed after passing the age of 70, you already have enough life experience to understand that it's impossible to please everyone, and that attempts to do so are doomed to disappointment. This isn't about retreating into isolation, but about gaining freedom. A person becomes more discerning about whose voices they allow into their life, and this is perfectly natural. The opinions of those who genuinely love you are of the greatest value, not those who barely know you. And even then, you have every right to make decisions that serve your well-being, happiness, and peace of mind, regardless of what others may think. Gaining inner strength and independence from the opinions of others is the true gift of maturity. Entering a room without a shadow of a doubt about the impression you're making isn't a sign of pride, but rather a sign of mature wisdom. It's self-confidence that only time can polish, and once you've experienced it, you can't go back to the previous insecurity. After all, there's nothing more pleasant than realizing that you live by your own rules without needing excuses or permissions. The desire to tirelessly follow fleeting trends is another trap set by modern society. Culture dictates the need to always be aware of the latest events, maintain physical fitness, and keep up with fashion. Whether it's the latest in clothing, technological innovations, or lifestyle trends, there's an unspoken expectation to conform, or risk being seen as old-fashioned. However, after 70, this pressure eases. One begins to see how superficial most trends are, how quickly they arise and disappear, and how little they affect joy, comfort, and self-esteem. For example, consider the story of 78-year-old Harold, who used to try to dress like everyone else. If skinny jeans were in fashion, he'd buy skinny jeans. If a new smartphone came out, he'd upgrade, even if it wasn't necessary. But one day, after buying a pair of soft corduroy pants that fit him perfectly and returning to reading paper books because he loved their smell and tactile feel, he realized he didn't care if it was fashionable or not. The main thing was to feel comfortable and be himself. This shift in perspective brought him more peace than any trendy gadget. In today's world, trends are often imposed as vital necessities, creating a sense of missing out and pushing people to act immediately to keep up with fashion. However, with time comes the understanding that true value lies in what truly benefits and aligns with personal needs. If a certain style of clothing or accessories suits a person, there's no reason to abandon it for fleeting trends. Similarly, if a new tool or technology simplifies daily life, it's logical to take advantage of it. But one shouldn't feel obligated to change just because someone has announced the arrival of another hot new thing. Instead of blindly following fashion, prioritize timeless values and respect your own pace of life. History shows that fashion trends are cyclical. What is popular today was forgotten yesterday and may return to fashion tomorrow. There's no need to participate in this endless race. The main victory lies in recognizing one's own individuality and choosing what brings comfort and confidence. Wear comfortable shoes, listen to music that inspires, and surround yourself with things that create an atmosphere of coziness and tranquility. True self-confidence isn't blindly following trends, but unconditionally accepting yourself and your life. It's a sense of harmony and comfort in your own world where there's no room for imposed standards and fleeting fads. Reflections on bygone days are often tinged with nostalgia and a slight sadness. Almost everyone carries a baggage of memories of moments they'd like to correct. A missed opportunity, a harsh word spoken in anger, a choice that now seems should have been made differently. Regret is a quiet but persistent companion accompanying us on life's journey. However, after crossing the age of 70, the attitude toward the past undergoes significant changes. Events of past years begin to be perceived not as a list of mistakes, but as a detailed map of the route that unerringly led the person to their current state. Immersing oneself in reflection brings the realization that every day lived, whether filled with joy or sorrow, contributed to the formation of personality, endowing it with depth, fortitude, and wisdom. 81-year-old Walter spent many years mentally returning to a decision he made in his early 40s. He turned down a promising job that offered a significant increase in income because it involved moving to another city. For decades, he was haunted by doubts about the correctness of his choice. But now, sitting in a cozy chair in the house where his children grew up and where he proudly watched his grandchildren grow up, he came to a deep understanding. This choice, which seemed doubtful at the time, gave him stability, the opportunity to be close to loved ones, and a life filled with valuable relationships that still have great significance. Looking back, Walter realizes that what once seemed like a regrettable omission actually turned into a hidden blessing of fate. The feeling of regret gradually loses its power over a person when self-compassion replaces self-blame. Having reached a venerable age, having crossed the age of 70, everyone deserves the right to stop criticizing their younger self. That former version of the person acted in the best way possible based on the available knowledge, resources, and emotional maturity of that time. And just as no one would reproach a child for not knowing algebra, so too can a mature person learn to forgive themselves for mistakes and blunders made in the past out of ignorance. Finding freedom lies in accepting what happened and learning lessons from past experiences. It's important to realize that life goes on, no matter what. This doesn't mean forgetting past events, but rather integrating them into life experience. A person accepts the lesson, personal growth, and even scars, allowing them to influence current decisions rather than punishing themselves for past mistakes. After all, regret can only exist in the past, while life relentlessly moves forward, unfolding in the present moment. Every new morning offers the opportunity to start with a clean slate, to fill another page of one's life. Instead of dwelling on what didn't happen, focus on the potential opportunities that can still be realized. This transition from regret to determination is one of the greatest gifts that maturity brings us. The past no longer weighs a person down, but serves as a kind of lantern, illuminating the path of life with hard-won wisdom and clarity. At a certain stage in life, everyone inevitably compares themselves to others. This tendency originates in school years, when grades, clothing style, and number of friends become subjects of comparison, and often continues into adulthood, manifesting in comparing home sizes, length of marriage, and children's successes. However, after crossing the age of 70, the desire for such comparisons gradually loses its strength. There comes an understanding that each person's life path is unique, filled with their own, often hidden from prying eyes, difficulties, and personal, albeit small, victories. It becomes clear that no two lives are exactly identical, both in terms of lived experience and in terms of allotted time and personal meaning. Lois, who reached the age of 75, shares her experience. Previously, when browsing social networks, she felt inadequate. Photos of former classmates, captured during vacations, anniversary celebrations, surrounded by grandchildren, gave her a sense of missed opportunities. However, one day, while walking through her garden, she realized that she was comparing bright, carefully selected moments of someone else's life with her own quiet and deeply meaningful life. She realized that she had health, freedom, and the ability to seek support from her close friends at any moment. This moment radically changed her perception of her own story, allowing her to see it not as a series of omissions, but as a unique and valuable narrative. Comparison, like a cunning thief, imperceptibly deprives not only joy, but also steals precious attention. When the gaze is constantly directed sideways, a person misses the opportunity to look inside themselves and move forward. The seemingly brilliant and carefree life of others hides an unbearable burden. The truth is that no one is immune to difficulties, losses, and disappointments, even those who, at first glance, are in complete control of their destiny. Only after crossing the age of 70 does it become clear that true success does not lie in achieving the same goals as everyone else. True success is finding inner peace, building relationships that nourish the soul, maintaining a passion that ignites the heart, and being able to appreciate the quiet moments that remind you of the journey you've taken. Life experience suggests that comparison is almost always based on incomplete and distorted information, and that the most important indicator is not external attributes, but an internal sense of harmony and happiness. Let others live their own stories, while you continue to write your unique book of life. Let the victories of others serve as a source of inspiration, without diminishing the value of your own path. There is no need to meet someone else's standards. It is important to remain true to yourself, your beliefs, and the values that are of paramount importance. Overcoming physical boundaries, characteristic of younger years, gives way to the wisdom of acceptance with age. In past decades, many people sought to prove their strength, endurance, and ability to cope with any task. Lifting weights without assistance, continuing to work despite the pain or hiding fatigue, they often ignored the signals of their body calling for rest, driven by pride or a desire for high productivity. However, reaching the age of 70, there comes an understanding that slowing down is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of wisdom. Rest is not defeat, but a sign of respect for your body. Being able to conserve energy is not laziness, but an act of self-preservation dictated by experience. 80-year-old Charles, for example, always mowed his own lawn despite the summer heat, convincing himself that it was a useful exercise and a way to maintain independence. But after another bout of dizziness forced him to see a doctor, he realized that his body wasn't just asking him to stop, it was demanding to be heard. Eventually, he hired a neighborhood teenager to do the job. Now he still enjoys being outdoors, but from a chair in the shade, sipping iced tea and discussing baseball games while the lawn is being mowed. By stepping back from his old habits, he lost nothing and gained peace and the ability to take care of his health. At this stage of life, after years of labor and care, a person's value is no longer determined by how much they can carry on their shoulders, how long they can go without rest, or how quickly they recover from strenuous exertion. An entire life has been dedicated to using one's body as a tool to care for loved ones, build a home, and earn a living. And now, as time relentlessly marches on, the body deserves care and gentle treatment in return. This means listening attentively to the quietest signals it sends before they escalate into a deafening cry of pain and discomfort. It means respecting one's physical limitations without shame or guilt. When a person stops exhausting themselves to create the appearance of tireless strength, they open up space for healing and recovery. They begin to notice the subtle signs their own body sends them and respond to them with kindness and understanding, rather than harsh judgment. Gradually, they learn to stretch gently, move at their own pace, allow themselves a short nap when needed, and ask for help from others without hesitation. There is immense power in knowing when to act and when to pause. Rest and recovery are not an escape from responsibility, but an active participation in maintaining one's own health and longevity. Choosing the optimal pace of life is not about doing less, but about focusing on what is truly important and meaningful, acting with full awareness and clarity of mind. There is no longer a need to prove anything to anyone, not even oneself. A great journey has already been made, and more than enough has been done. And now everyone has the full right to move through life with ease, grace, and an open heart filled with love and gratitude. Secret resentments are like an unbearable burden that, even when deeply hidden, insidiously poisons the mind, drains life force, and erects impenetrable walls around the heart. In youth, nurturing a grudge may seem like an act of self-preservation, a kind of shield protecting against repeated emotional wounds. However, after passing the age of 70, one realizes the exorbitant price paid for old, unhealed wounds. And then the energy spent maintaining anger suddenly loses all meaning. Phyllis, a venerable 79-year-old woman, had been estranged from her sister for many years, following a quarrel that occurred in their middle age. Over time, the details of that quarrel faded from memory, but the estrangement between them remained. Every family celebration was marred by a tense atmosphere and deliberate avoidance of each other. But after a recent operation that made Phyllis feel the fragility of existence, she decided to make a call. The sisters talked for an hour, reminiscing not about past grievances, but about their grandchildren, gardening hobbies, and bright moments of the past. This conversation did not erase past disagreements, but managed to smooth out the rough edges and give both women long-awaited peace of mind. Releasing resentment does not imply approval of what happened, but rather a conscious choice in favor of inner peace, which is far more valuable than the pain experienced. This act of forgiveness is directed primarily at oneself, not at the offender. Prolonged retention of bitterness and malice in the soul leads to them crowding out positive emotions, such as joy, a sense of unity with others, and the possibility of healing. Abandoning old grievances brings a sense of freedom and eliminates the need to replay unpleasant memories in one's head again and again. There comes an understanding that all people are imperfect, subject to difficulties, and often cause pain to others while being wounded themselves. This in no way justifies the harm caused, but it helps to find an explanation for it and soften the heart, primarily for one's own well-being, and not for the sake of forgiving the offender. Forgiveness does not always entail reconciliation. Sometimes it is simply a statement of fact. I no longer intend to carry this, and a release from the burden. It is permission to move on without burdening oneself with the weight of past offenses. More worthy burdens await ahead: hope, joy, curiosity, and love, feelings that blossom in a heart free from the shackles of old pain. The desire to meet generally accepted deadlines at all costs is a heavy burden that humanity carries throughout its life. From an early age, society persistently instills in individuals the idea of a universal timeline that must be strictly adhered to. Complete education by a certain age, start a family by a particular year, retire at a specific moment, and find your soulmate by a certain date. This scenario places immense pressure on most people, making them feel obligated to conform to these imposed standards. If one falls behind schedule, there's a crushing sense of inadequacy, as if a vital opportunity has been missed. However, after 70, this rigid structure begins to crumble, revealing the artificiality of the deadlines and the boundless joys that exist beyond the prescribed schedule. Take, for example, Henry, an 82-year-old man who decided to start learning piano just last year. The dream of mastering this instrument had lived within him for many years, but he never found the time or courage to pursue it. He was plagued by doubts, fearing he would be too slow, inhibited, or simply too late. But now, every morning, his fingers touch the keys with trembling determination and quiet pride, extracting magical sounds from them. Henry no longer strives for virtuosity. He cares only about the music, the thirst for knowledge, and the feeling that he is doing something purely for himself. This is what makes his lessons beautiful and fills his life with new meaning. With age, after crossing the threshold of 70, comes the realization that life's true values are not subject to the passage of time. Love, the pursuit of knowledge, creative self-expression, and spiritual healing do not fade with the years. On the contrary, they flourish when given due attention. Striving to meet others' ideas of success only distracts from the search for one's own path. Whether it's a new hobby, strengthening connections with loved ones, or a bold step into the unknown, the time is always right if it aligns with your inner feelings. Giving up the pointless race does not mean defeat. It's more like an awakening to the understanding that the most important chapters of life are yet to be written, that one's personal story does not have to conform to someone else's templates to be meaningful. Joy, growth, and new discoveries are available not only to the young, but also to those who sincerely desire them. If something deeply touches the soul, don't ask if it's too late. Instead, ask yourself, does it still call to me? If the answer is yes, then it truly matters. And if it matters to you, that's enough. A person is not falling behind in life. They are exactly where they need to be, creating their own story, respecting their own rhythm, desires, and true aspirations. In conclusion, it is worth taking a moment to reflect on the 7 key aspects that have been considered. Which of them resonated with your soul, and which brought a sense of relief and allowed you to look at yourself with greater kindness? Perhaps someone will realize that they have already gotten rid of some of these burdens, while someone else, on the contrary, will realize for the first time what a load of unnecessary burden they have been carrying on their shoulders. In any case, now is the perfect time to lighten your load. Life after 70 is not a sunset, but rather an awakening to one's own voice, needs, and rhythm. It is a period when a person stops chasing what does not serve them and begins to value what truly matters. This peace is earned not by avoiding difficulties, but by going through them. Every step, even the one that caused doubt, has led to this point of clarity. Giving up what doesn't matter is not a sign of indifference, but a conscious choice. It is a choice of presence instead of pressure, joy instead of judgment, depth instead of superficial distractions. And the more a person accepts this, the more space is freed up for connection, purpose, and meaning in the years to come. Therefore, as you move forward, it is important to remember that there is no need to chase anyone or look back. You just need to be here and now, fully present, yourself, and open to everything that awaits you. After all, what no longer matters has cleared the way for what truly does.